Germany, the first author of a seminal paper in Nature Machine Intelligence on AI ethics, Dr. Lukas from Indonesia, the chairman of Indonesia Artificial Intelligence Society, Lena Rickenberg from Germany, project lead at the think tank I Rights Lab, Dr. Jun-E Tan from Malaysia, senior research associate at Khazanah Research Institute, and Arthit Suriyawongkul from Thailand, who is computer scientist and cultural anthropologist. Finally, I would like to express our gratitude to our partners in this conference. And here I'd like to mention EngageMedia and its team, as well as the Center for Digital Society and their team. I also like to thank our media partner, Compass. To all of you, thank you very much for the cooperation which made the conference possible. To all your participants attending today, thank you for being with us and your interest in the topic. I wish you to leave the conference with a novel understanding of artificial intelligence and its ethical implications and a renewed hope in the future. We encourage you in discussions, share your insights and foster a dialogue even beyond the conference today, because this event today is not the end, but the beginning of a bigger conversation about AI and ethics in Indonesia. Thank you, and without any further, let's begin. And with that, I would like to ask Dr. Anna Jobin from Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society Berlin to the stage.
Thank you. I'm just waiting for the slides to work. In the meantime, I can practice my Indonesian. Selamat siang. Welcome, herzlich willkommen und vielen Dank für die Einladung. My presentation on ethical principles will get started once I can get the clicker to work. Oh, great. And actually, I will talk about ethics for AI, but I will start with another example of an ethical principle. Primum non nocere, first, do no harm, is a cornerstone of Western medical ethics. It is often associated with the Hippocratic Oath. This ancient pledge, attributed to the Greek physician Hippocrates, dates back to the 5th to 3rd century BC. The image here shown is a fragment of the earliest surviving copy from the year 275. Now, although the phrase, do no harm, doesn't actually appear in this early version, the Hippocratic Oath emphasizes the medical duty to avoid harming patients, known as non-maleficence. Now let's fast forward to another example of the ethical principle of non-maleficence. Okay, it worked. You've already seen it before, the former Google motto, don't be evil. It shares the same core idea. It emphasizes the importance of avoiding wrongdoing. However, it is crucial to distinguish that refraining from harm, so non-maleficence, is not the same as beneficence, which is actively doing good. So how does this relate to AI? Next. Please. Next. Okay, great. Ethical principles for AI have been proliferating since the last decade. An example are Microsoft's AI principles from 2018, which include fairness, accountability, and transparency. Next. In 2019, my former colleagues from ETH Zurich and I published a paper in Nature Machine Intelligence examining existing AI guidelines. The paper's title is also the title of this talk, though I will not only talk about the paper, but also about what happened after our analysis of AI ethics guidelines. And by the end, I hope you will better understand the challenges posed by ethical principles in the context of AI. Next. Principles and guidelines for ethical AI are part of what may best be termed soft law, and are as such part of AI policy. Next. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, a policy is a plan or set of ideas officially agreed upon. An AI policy is the sum of all normative undertakings whose aim it is to shape or govern AI. It comprises various initiatives, implementations, and modes of governance. We will dive much deeper into this later today with the other fabulous speakers. So for now, I will give you only one small example of different modes of governance in AI policy. Next. This slide is from our ongoing research project at the Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society called Shaping AI. It depicts a quantitative analysis of the modes of governance mentioned in German AI policy documents over time. The chart shows the increasing policy focus on AI since 2018, and it also highlights a diverse range of governance approaches mentioned, including regulation, funding, stakeholder dialogues, and guidelines. Next. Guidelines are part of so-called soft law, which includes non-binding measures like self-regulation, best practices, and corporate guidelines. This contrasts with hard law, which involves legally binding regulation enforced by the state. Soft law is generally well-suited for governing emerging technologies due to its flexibility and adaptability. It can swiftly respond to changing technology landscapes, accommodate sector-specific differences, and operate across borders without the time-consuming processes of hard law. Next. So let us have a closer look at AI ethics guidelines. Next. In June 2018, Google published its AI principles, which attracted significant media and public attention. Google's principles included calls for AI to be socially beneficial and to avoid reinforcing unfair bias. However, Google wasn't the first nor the only organization to publish such principles at that time. Next. You may remember that Microsoft also issued AI principles. Next, please. With my colleagues, we explored which other organizations had done the same. Now, next, 5 times. Next, 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 next. We did find 84 such documents by mid-April 2019. These are not even all of the logos. But the diversity of organizations shows that the pursuit of ethical AI isn't limited to specific sectors. It's a widespread shared concern. Next. The public and the private sector issued a similar amount of documents, each roughly 1/3, followed by the research sector and non-profit organizations. You can find all the details in our paper. So next, we identified the ethical principles actually occurring in these documents. So not all principles that should exist, but those that actually occur. We identified 11 different ethical principles with no single one occurring in all of the documents. Even the most prevalent principle, transparency, wasn't universally addressed. You can see that the three principles, solidarity, sustainability, and human dignity, were mentioned particularly infrequently. When deepening our analysis of the content of these documents, we found significant discrepancies in the interpretation, scope, stakeholders involved, and practical implementation recommended for these ethical principles across documents. Next. To illustrate that last point, I use a few examples from one specific ethical principle, beneficence, which you now know means actively doing good or welfare. It echoes one of the important missions of public policy. Next. In the corpus of guidelines, next please, yes, thank you. In the corpus of guidelines we analyzed, beneficence was described as peace and happiness, or economic prosperity, or more generally as flourishing, if it was defined at all. Because this is not a definition, it is what we found in the documents related to the ethical principles of beneficence. Next, the different guidelines that mentioned beneficence disagreed as to whom AI should benefit. Customers only, as one private company suggested, or every single person, or society as a whole. Some documents request that AI benefit humanity, or all sentient creatures, the environment, or even the planet. Next. And to implement the theoretical principle of beneficence, some guidelines suggested to align AI with human values. Now that's easy, right? Whereas others proposed to do it by advancing the scientific understanding of the world. And where one document proposes to minimize power concentration, another one states, conversely, that power should be used for the benefit of human rights. Next, such a contrasting interpretation shows that this is about more than AI. It indicates opposing conceptions of policy, opposing conceptions of what it means to govern. And we can find countless such divergences or other dilemmas once we look beyond the stated high-level principles. Next. So in sum, even though there is an apparent convergence towards the most mentioned principles, there is no consensus at all on how to interpret these principles, their significance, or the specific issues, domains, or actors they apply to. Next. So what happened next? What happened next is I was invited to look back. Every year, the editor of Nature Machine Intelligence invites first authors of prospective articles to reflect on their research, which, by the way, I find a very constructive format for academic discourse and exchange. Next. Some of the questions I was asked were whether I felt that the topic has evolved, next, please, since we published our research, whether my own thinking had changed, and if I had been surprised or worried by recent developments in AI, and what my hopes or expectations were. I revisit this today because fundamentally, my own stance on this has remained quite unchanged since then. Next. Asked whether I felt that the topic has developed over 2020, I replied that yes, I had noticed an important push towards broader acceptance of the socio-technicity of AI, which shifts the focus from fairness or AI for good towards the question of power distribution and power differentials. Or, next, as Pratyusha Kalluri put it, don't ask if AI is good or fair. Ask how it shifts power. Those who could be exploited by AI should be shaping its projects. Next. Has my perspective evolved on this topic? Indeed, it has. Our examination of AI ethics guidelines made clear to me the importance of details. Yet, simultaneously, we mustn't lose sight of the bigger picture. It is crucial to consider who defines AI ethics and the processes that decide what counts as ethical AI. Next. Was I surprised in 2020? Yes, I was. I was surprised to see students chanting "F the algorithm" in the streets of London, and I was excited to see protests against unjust algorithmic scoring having an impact. And the slogan, and I still cannot believe an academic journal did actually print it. So the slogan in its crudeness, I think, reflects the frustration the people in the street felt. Their pushback, by the way, finds a close parallel in events as recently as last week. Next. Hollywood screenwriters went on strike, and the deal their union reached last week with the studios included rules for when not to use AI. Next. So beyond the pleasant surprises, my concerns extend beyond AI itself. AI is often presented as a panacea for problems that cannot be solved by AI. And not only big tech, but also some researchers and public sector actors may prioritize their status over ethical concerns. Whistleblower protection remains insufficient, yet this is so crucial. And big tech companies often ignore or even suppress critical voices and collective action. Yet, these are potential drivers for change for the better. So why haven't the many principles made the AI ecosystem overall more ethical, in general speaking? Well, researchers actually offer some insights on this that compel us to look beyond principles. Next. Going beyond ethical principles brings us back to the beginning of my talk. Next. Remember the Hippocratic Oath for medical practitioners? Do no harm? It unfortunately did not prevent all medical harm throughout the centuries either. Today, we are aware of deeply troubling episodes in medical history conducted under the banners of science. To name but one example, for instance, from the 1930s to the 1972, the US Public Health Service conducted a study on untreated syphilis in Alabama involving hundreds of unsuspecting men of color. They were not informed and were sometimes withheld effective treatment, leading to worsened symptoms, and many died. This was uncovered by journalists and caused, rightfully, public outrage, changing then the course and impact of medical ethics. Next. It resulted in the 1974 legislation on medical research and the establishment of a national commission which authored the Belmont Report. The Belmont Report laid down 3 essential ethical principles for biomedical and behavioral research. These principles are now integral to regulations, medical and scientific institutions, certifications, and more. Overall, this system has effectively operated for decades. So why might such a principle-based approach not be a good solution for the field of AI? Oxford ethicist Brent Mittelstadt put together a 4-part argument in which he compares directly AI ethics with principle-based medical ethics. He finds that, for one, and unlike medicine, AI companies lack a substantial mandate to prioritize the greater good and the well-being of their users. More generally, he points out that the ethical principles of the Belmont Report, they were the result of a process and historical development, not the beginning. In addition, AI faces difficulties in implementing ethical principles due to the absence of established assessment and oversight mechanisms, such as institutional ethics council or evidence-based guidelines covering all their domains of deployment and application. And lastly, and again, in contrast to the medical field, AI development lacks robust legal and professional accountability mechanisms, including professional obligations and the ability to impose sanctions. AI is many things, but we keep coming back to the fact that it is also big business. And sustainability issues notwithstanding, and I hope we will be able to get into these, the business perspective has provided the most significant criticism of AI ethics. It underscores the fact that business choices often are not scrutinized in the same degree that AI design choices are scrutinized. AI is assumed as a given, even though resources allocated to AI might perhaps actually be better used elsewhere. Moreover, there's a genuine risk of ethics washing, where ethics serves as a superficial cover for underlying issues. And this concern is amplified by the co-optation of AI ethics by major tech firms in the practical challenges of implementing ethical principles in a business context. Perhaps one illustration from our corpus, noticed by chance. During the 2018 US midterm elections, the website of the Microsoft AI principles, that was before like this, was updated. Suddenly, the somehow eerie description of the principle of fairness, AI must maximize efficiencies without destroying dignity and guard against bias, was replaced by the wording, AI systems should treat all people fairly. No more hinting at the possibility that AI could destroy dignity. Also, suddenly, Microsoft had not 4 but 6 principles illustrated by videos. And if you visit the website today, the layout is different and the videos aren't linked anymore, but the wording hasn't changed. To wrap up, I will share a few thoughts on what I am currently attempting to think through. Whether it is AI, so-called generative tools, algorithmic systems, automated decision-making, and so forth, I wonder what are not the differences, but the similarities to the questions of governance we asked 10 years ago about social media or web search results, or 20 years ago about the web. I wrote my most read blog post on sociostrategy.com 10 years ago about Google's autocomplete algorithms and asked who is in charge when algorithms are in charge of the language we use to make sense of the world. Our language, our identities, our lives have become deeply intertwined with only a handful of information and communication companies, which are clearly more like infrastructures than just technologies. So back to the question, how is power shifting? But I do not want to leave you on this open-ended note, so I end by sharing my hopes for AI, because I still owe you my reply to the 4th question I listed. What are your hopes or expectations for AI in 2021? And my answer for 2021 was the same as it would be today. Concerning the design, creation, training, deployment, or use of AI, I expect the people and institutions that have decision-making power in these domains to prioritize the well-being of minorities and vulnerable communities. Overall, I hope to see a shift in how AI is governed, resulting in the allocation of more decision-making power to those who may or will actually be affected by these systems. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this event. Thank you for Goethe-Institut, Compass Media, EngageMedia for hosting this great event, CFDS as well. My name is Lukas. I'm representing the community, Indonesia Artificial Intelligence Society. And today I would like to share with you the state of AI in Indonesia. So perhaps this would be additional or to make the complete picture of the discussion today, because what I see is from the speaker and the colleagues is from the social, while I think I am the only technical panelist today. So, but all of the audience here, mostly are Indonesian, so we would like to share with you, so at least what we have in this country in regard in AI development. So this is in short about myself. The state of AI in Indonesia. So I will start with this. This also has been discussed in many occasions that 2020, about 3 years ago, we have successfully completed our Indonesia National AI Strategy. So before the time, we were thinking about the presence of Indonesia in AI map. So we were very curious, when will be Indonesia also in the map? Because during the time, all other countries are already putting their flag in the globe. So including our neighbors, Singapore, Taiwan, Japan, China, and then most of the European countries also have their national AI strategy. And we finally discussed this with about a consortium, about 100 experts from quadruple helix, from government, education, business, as well as from the society. So at the time, we still have the BPPT, Pak Hamam as the chief of BPPT, and then our minister at the time, Prof. Bambang Brojonegoro. And this completion of National AI Strategy, it was in August 2020. And the document is open, you can access from this link. So, for the current situation in AI, in short, in this presentation, I will share with you something. The government, we can see that government has a very good political will. Namely, we can refer to the National AI Strategy, and then the development of infrastructure, the Palaparing, the High Performance Computing Initiative, and also from the BRIN, preparing the data set, the government satu data, one data platform, as well as many policy issues also have been developed here, where the discussion is to balance between innovation and the risk and safety. So, and industry players, we also see the growing of AI interest in Indonesia. It is a good positive momentum in AI industry, while around the world maybe also many countries eager to see this development of AI, but in this economic also distress nowadays around the world. In Indonesia, mostly the industry are focused in financial insurance industry, and then also the application we can see for the healthcare and business process. But unfortunately, the situation is also, we lack of investment in data. So as discussed by other panelists, so the AI, many people see it as a black box. When we implement or when we buy it, it is like intelligent solution to finish all our problem. While in fact AI needs not only a lot of data, but also relevant and good quality data. And that's what we need to be prepared. And this is in short the graph showing the development of market size AI in Indonesia. We can see mostly the application of machine learning, some application AI robotics in manufacturing maybe, autonomous and sensor technologies already developed many years ago. And nowadays maybe in relation with the ChatGPT, we can see that the development of natural language processing becomes more familiar. While this NLP in fact has been developed many years ago in transcription, in language translation and so on, but due to the development of generative AI, ChatGPT, then this one also becomes a hype in Indonesia. This is the changes in market size in AI, the application. You can see the development. And okay, sorry, the slide is quite a lot, so I need to be rather fast. The total investment in Indonesia, it grows also. You can see here in Asia, especially ASEAN countries, Indonesia is quite growing. Perhaps we can compare, we are the second from the Singapore. Mostly the investment is in financial and insurance. You can see in the highest one. The other one is still in development. In the sense of how Indonesia developed itself, and their own product is like this one. We can see Indonesia is growing. We can see this from the number of products, publications, where Indonesia, in fact, are very creative in this AI industry. However, we have also to realize some barriers in AI development. In comparison to other ASEAN countries, Indonesia position number 4. So you can see there some comparison between the early stages and now the station here. You can see the development from stage 1 to stage 5. Indonesia, previously it was 2%, but then it grows here. It's mostly Indonesia is in the stage 3. Yeah. And then these are the sectors where the AI applications in these Asian countries. Next, the challenge is also in the talent shortage. So therefore, this is one of the main focus of the Indonesia AI Society. Every day we concern about how to develop more and more talent, AI talent, not only public awareness of AI, but also the proficiency in developing the product. You can see here the chart, the AI talent demand is growing exponentially, while the growth we can see from the educational sectors, especially AI module, AI curriculum still need to be developed. So some campuses, some academy already prepared for this one, but we still need a lot of AI education and AI preparation for the talent shortage. Also the infrastructure, because we also need the AI, mostly you need a very good infrastructure, not only in the computing power, on-premise or cloud, but also the connection, because some application will be cloud-based application. So we need high-speed internet and advanced computing resources. While Indonesia is, as we all know, it's very widespread, more than 17,000 islands. So the challenge of our government also still need to be addressed. And this digital divide in Indonesia also hampers the development and deployment of AI technologies in rural areas. We are in Jakarta, we are in Java, perhaps we see and we enjoy all the development of AI, but less thing, those our brothers sisters who lives in other islands who have still difficulties in the infrastructure. And another challenge is in data quality and availability, as I mentioned before. So AI, we should remember that AI can, in simplest form, consist of hardware and the processing machine, algorithm or software, data, as well as the use case. And most of the people often forgot about this data part, where data need to be prepared, data need to be trained. So there are a lot of times for this part, getting the good data, the right data, unbiased data, and even after having the data, we need to iterate until the model is good. So the high quality data is the lifeblood of AI, and Indonesia need to address data quality. On the other hand, Indonesia is a very rich country. We have natural resources. In Indonesia, almost everything becomes data set, AI data set. Indonesia richness in culture, in demography, in natural resources, everything is data and can be used as AI processing, AI computation to give some insight on the use of and the development of Indonesia economy. And then regulatory, this is also discussed in many occasions about regulatory is still difficult around the world. Also many countries also try to adjust, to find what's the best formula for this regulatory of AI, because AI still, nobody has one single definition of what AI is. Is it hardware, is it software, is it system, is it, what kind of animal is this? Is still, there's no single definition of AI. And then we also need a clear, stable, adaptive regulation are necessary to encourage AI investment. So business also need some space to develop AI innovations. Therefore, there should be a balance between regulation and the AI in doing their experiments and innovations. And then public awareness and acceptance. This is also part of the, maybe in social, some colleagues from the panelists maybe will explore further about the techno-social aspects. Because technology, when it's deployed, from our perspective, myself as technology, so we develop in the lab. So once it's rolled out and deployed to the community, then there will be some impact. And the first one is whether it is, whether the public aware of it, and then they accept this technology, and what are the socio-cultural interaction for this AI. Some are quite sensitive due to the local culture. And then adapting AI solution in Indonesia needs to consider the diverse cultural and linguistic landscape in Indonesia. While whatever is agreed in Java, perhaps in Kalimantan or Sulawesi or Sumatra, there must be another discussion and to adjust and so on. And then in Indonesia, we also need some innovation-friendly ecosystem, because AI is still early stage in the graph of adoption in Indonesia. So our government is dedicated in creating innovation-friendly ecosystem that encourage AI development, AI research, and entrepreneurship while ensuring the adherence to ethical guidelines. Some aspect about ethical and socio-cultural risks. For instance, there's concern that if it is not developed responsibly, may perpetuate some biases. It will reinforce stereotypes and inadvertently discriminate against some certain groups. Because okay, in Indonesia there is not homogeneous, but it's a very heterogeneous society. And these ethical and socio-cultural risks need careful consideration to ensure AI aligns with our diverse cultural values. Next, some problem also with data privacy, which we have just law, the privacy data law last year, and also some security. And these days we are also discussing about the cybersecurity breach, some cybersecurity events, incidents in Indonesia. Later on in AI, all AI application will be in the computational machine, and therefore the cybersecurity risk need also to be considered. Not only the system, but also about the data. So as I mentioned before, AI consists of machine as well as the data. So the machine itself need to be protected, while the data needs some procedures also to some measure to secure data handling to maintain the public trust. Okay, this is the cybersecurity threat, and the last one also digital divide, because of the situation in Indonesia, so it's very challenging. However, okay, in one hand, that's the real situation, but we need to keep our positive spirit. Some potential areas for international collaboration in Indonesia. The first one is there are AI research and development. We have a lot, and we have many collaboration with many countries. We have some collaborative research project between Indonesia universities, UK. Last month I also visited Russia. We have some discussion with the neighboring country. So this institution also will become our basic for the next development. And then we have talent development. The partnership in AI education and training can help to bridge the talent gap in Indonesia, ensuring skilled workforce for the AI industry. And then we are still working on this one, the ethical AI and regulatory framework, namely this collaborative effort in shaping the ethical AI principles and guidelines, which can ensure AI development aligns with Indonesia values. And this is also some samples. I cannot show you all comprehensive list, but these are some AI application. The first one is in agriculture. We can see the application of precision agriculture, namely driven by AI for boosting crop yields, because this is also one of the main problem in Indonesia, the food resilience. Some AI-powered solutions are helping farmers to make data-driven decisions. Also, besides the farming, also because Indonesia a lot of seas, then also maritime, and we can see the e-fishery application or this startup, for instance, using the AI-based smart feeding technology for aquaculture, improving fish farm efficiency and sustainability. In healthcare, we also have some application transforming healthcare sector in Indonesia. We can feel this during the pandemic era, where most of us cannot go out, and most of the service move from the on-premise to online. So we can see some example here. HelloDoc, for instance, provides comprehensive healthcare platform that use AI for telemedicine consultation, medicine delivery, health service using NLP. And then there is Arogya AI for health commerce, health inventory manager. Next, in financial service innovation, we have the AI-powered chatbots for detecting fraud, for credit scoring, and revolutionizing financial sector, improving access to banking and financial services. For example, Invest3. Next, in NLP, we must be proud. Then we have several startups which is very advanced in AI. For instance, Bahasa AI, Bahasa Kita, where the NLP solution is able to do real-time transcription. And then there's also Kata AI, AI-driven chatbots for healthcare providers. I think this is also for some customer service for the telco industry. When you contact Telkom, Excel or Indosat, then the first line of the consultation is served by this kind of chatbot, and that's local product. And then in education, we can see some AI application, Ruang Guru, Zenius, for instance. I suppose most of you knows about this. And then economic growth, there is Gojek, all of us using this one. Tokopedia, this was very popular in Indonesia. Tokopedia now merged with this one, so they have become one super app and super application. I think that's my short presentation for the AI state in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
So I should be understood by now. Thank you very much. So I think we need the next slides. But let me already start with saying thank you, because it's been so far a very pleasant conference and a very good organization. So I've just learned one word in Bahasa, which is makasih, and I've used it already a lot in the past days here. So I will be giving you a few examples today from the world of mobility, because I am most and for all a data and mobility enthusiast. And I am not a German teacher, but nonetheless, I want to teach you 3 very unique German words that you have probably never heard before at Goethe-Institut. Maybe you have. And they don't have an equivalent in another language. If they have one in Bahasa, please come afterwards to tell me. So interestingly, when it comes to AI systems and in AI in general, I notice that it seems to be that there is no middle ground in a way. People are either really enthusiastic about AI, what it can do, what world we could have when AI was used, and it could really change the most difficult problems that we have. And on the other side, you have people that are really afraid of AI, what it already can do today, and what it will be able to do, that it takes people's jobs and brings people, humans out of place. So they see AI rather as a threat than an ally. But the question on whether AI is an ally or an adversary is a question that is actually often asked in these discourses and debates about AI, but it doesn't really get us very far in a more sophisticated consideration about the matter, because it always has this innate quality of, okay, AI is either completely good or completely bad. But as a matter of fact, AI systems aren't anything without the creators who build it and the humans that use it. And it also depends on the context in which AI systems are used. So as a tool, it can be used in a context with good intentions or bad intentions. And also a tool can be used with different outcomes. But it's not just the intention, it's also how the system is designed and where we use it, which has an effect on whether a person is discriminated against or not. And I wouldn't go so far to say that it's per se a wrong question to ask, but especially when we want to talk about discrimination and AI, which this talk will be about, we have another question that I will be getting to later. So discrimination occurs in all areas of our lives, including technology. We speak of automated or algorithm-mediated discrimination when the development of the use of complex software leads to an unequal treatment with far-reaching consequences. Especially in relation to AI software, terms such as AI bias, machine bias are used. Discrimination as such is not a process that should only be traced to an individual or individual behavior. It is implemented in organizations in society, and thus it's the base for discrimination, and this also finds the way into the AI models and the application context. They are part of the databases and the underlying assumptions that the models are developed from. However, there was a study in Germany 2022 that the population shows a greater awareness for this topic, 66% of Germans responded that there is a fear that people could be discriminated or disadvantaged against. But why is this discrimination so special? It is very difficult per se to stop discrimination from happening in our societies and in the digital world, in the physical and the digital world. But what makes it so special is that it's automated on a very, very large scale. It's not just one person anymore that discriminates one other. It's a large system that is scalable. So the potential is that it could exclude specific groups actually from a certain aspect of our society. And furthermore, there is a lack of transparency, how the discrimination actually happened, and it's very hard to trace it back, which makes regulation so complicated. And even worse, when there's a person that found out that it is discriminated against, this person wouldn't usually know where to go to with this problem. So there are roughly 3 different factors on how automated discrimination can happen. One is the most obvious one, it's intentionally, which means that the AI system was built with the goal by a company, a service provider, or a government to an unequal treatment to a certain group. The second is that an assumption or a criteria is used in the building, coding, testing, and implementation phase of an AI system that is flawed, or that there's a mismatch in the communication or too much space for interpretation of what the AI model should actually do. And we've already heard just before by Dr. Lukas how important data is. And it's the third type and the most important one nowadays, because most AI models today are based largely on large data sets. But I want to strike out in this context that it's very normal that there are somehow biases in the data. It is a norm, and usually data scientists and developers try to diversify their data sets, not because of goodwill, but because they want to have better outcomes and accuracy for their systems. So not every bias will have a discriminatory outcome, but there's definitely the potential for it. And I want to exemplify these factors shortly, but first of all, I want to teach you one German word, which is this one, Bedenkenträger. German, okay, some people know it apparently. Germans are generally known to be a bit more skeptic about new technologies compared to other countries, especially when you look at the data protection issue, and AI is also not an exception here. So that word literally means worry carrier, which is a person with a basic critical attitude towards something, in our case, towards new technologies. And yet we have conducted a representative survey in Germany last year, which said that it is a more differentiated picture. So we found out that the level of trust in AI systems actually is different in various domains that we see here. So we see that 80% of people would trust AI systems in the mobility and transport sector, which is then a good starting point for this presentation here. So let's have a look at Germany's favorite mode of transportation, which is, of course, the car. They are actually becoming smarter and smarter. By time, they get more digital features, more driving assistance, entertainment systems, what so on. And for all of this, we need software and we need data and often also AI systems. Even the very traditional car companies in Germany agree nowadays to the vision that cars have to become computers on wheels, which is a sentence that I hear very often right now. But what are the potential risks? In the voice output from a car, you usually have a couple of languages you can choose from. So there's a navigation system, but also you can talk to the car, give commands, and then the speaker will start, the radio will turn on, something like this. It is, however, for companies not profitable to translate the system into each and every language. For example, the voice control of the navigation system TomTom supports only 17 languages. And I've checked, none of the Indonesian languages is in it. Sorry. So this is a conscious decision by a company with the potential that certain groups will not be capable of using this service. In this case, the consequences are not so severe because in Indonesia, for example, you do have alternatives. But it's not always so. And as we see more and more sophisticated large language models that already cover more languages, we're also likely to see more languages in those systems. For example, Mercedes-Benz is already using ChatGPT right now as the voice output in their American cars. Caroline Criado Perez's book, Invisible Women, starts with a story of a town in Sweden that decided to apply a gender lens on policy. And analyzers found out that the administrator's approach of clearing streets from snow led to a gender inequality. They were prioritizing major traffic roads rather than footpath and cycle path. But 3 times more pedestrians than motorists were injured in a single vehicle accident by icy roads. So this disadvantages women because they are more prone to walk and to use public transport than men, which still leads back to classical gender roles. Anyhow, it led to that women were significantly more often injured by this snow plowing policy. But of course, it wasn't the administrator's intention to implement a system that causes gender inequality. The decision for this approach was based on the assumption that it would be an optimal allocation for the resources that they have. And this is actually an important finding, maybe not here because you don't have so much snow, but in the Nordic countries, many municipalities already use algorithmic systems to support the snow plowing process. Another example, face recognition. I think some of you already do it, that you use your Face ID to unlock your phone. There are already the first cars that can do it, that you can open the car via the Face ID. And the research by Joy Bulamawini illustrated that even latest technologies of face recognition software can include flaws that led to racial and sexist results. In this study, the researchers examined the accuracy of AI applications offered by the companies Microsoft and IBM. They concluded that the AI applications showed higher errors for faces for women of color compared to men with lighter skin tones. So what happened? It can be traced back to a lack of diversity in the data sets. After this came to light, IBM actually started to diversify their data sets with more training data from non-white faces, and it already showed good results. Shared mobility is yet a male thing, at least when you look at the data of it. Between 60 to 75% of shared car, bike, or scooter users are men. Some providers even go up to 90%. So this disparity has persisted ever since car sharing was introduced, and it continues with the new services. But it could also be a self-made problem. The German researcher Ines Kafgan-Kagan has analyzed data from free-floating car sharing, and one aspect here is the algorithm. With the help of the calculation process, the sharing providers optimize the number of vehicles waiting at a customer at a given time, and also where to relocate the vehicles. So the data is provided, the training data also is provided by each rental from the users themselves. And as long as predominantly men use those apps, the algorithm will always want to optimize the service for them. So example, relocating the cars where men are more likely to find them. So it's basically a feedback loop. It's something, it's a bias that can be referred to as the gender data gap. Last example, there was the following case, a man with an Italian and Nigerian citizenship had tried to get a car insurance, and depending which nationality he said on the telephone, he would get a different price. So he also tried to check it out online, since most car insurance companies do these services online now. To reveal potential discrimination, the University of Padua, amongst others, conducted the research where they used comparison portals and different profiles. And they confirmed, depending on the place of birth, your citizenship, or both, the price of the insurance varied greatly in some cases. So a driver born in Ghana might pay 1,000 euros more a year than a driver from Milan with otherwise the same profile. So you could say, wow, sounds like a cool new world, right? Worst case, the car won't let me in because it doesn't recognize my face. The navigation system can't speak my language. I pay way too much for my car insurance. Women aren't safe when it snows, and they don't find shared cars because they can't find them. So as you can learn from these examples, it is very important, and we need to be careful about where and how to use AI models in the domain of mobility. So let me put it differently by teaching you another German word, which is verschlimmbessern, which means aggravate, improve. It means something like making something worse despite well-intentioned action. So in this case, it means the companies tried to make it more convenient for people to get into the car, or the navigation system was used with voice output, which is also more convenient than pressing buttons. They wanted to calculate a fairer price for the customer, and the municipality wanted to just allocate an optimal outcome. And at the same time, usually unintentionally, specific groups were excluded from the services or discriminated against. But these shortcomings can be addressed, as we have seen in the example of IBM. And it's usually not the intention of companies nor of governments or municipalities to deliberately discriminate. So let me get back where we began with the question that I raised. It's not the AI that is our ally or our adversary, because humans are eventually in charge of it. It is the companies, the institutions, and the people that develop AI systems that we need to focus on. Their underlying assumptions, their unconscious biases, and their ability and willing to use diversified data sets, as well as to twitch the system when discrimination is detected. But it's also the cultural and social structure that is important, that we need to shed a light on when we talk about discrimination. So the better question here is actually, how do we prevent AI-mediated discrimination? That's the real question, and we've already struck it out before by my dear colleague Anna, that it's very complicated to put this into regulation and words. So one attempt is happening right now in Europe. But first, I want to show you another German word, which is Torschlusspanik. So Europe is caught between two sentiments at the moment. So the first is to control the enormous power of AI for the greater good of the people and to protect them. But the second is also the pressure of trying to become a leader in the AI industry, or at least not falling more back behind. And this is a sentiment that can be quite good expressed by Torschlusspanik, which means literally gate closing panic. So it's a fear of missing out on something important in life. So meanwhile, in Europe, it's supposed to be the next big thing from Europe. The AI regulation is intended to serve as an international model for regulating AI that focuses on the rights of every individual. After the European Parliament adopted its proposal in June, it's now negotiating with the Council of the European Union and the European Commission on aspects that are still controversial. For example, how to handle foundation models or all-purpose AI, such as ChatGPT. But there is a great time pressure because the law should actually be in place by the beginning of 2024. AI systems and their application context are to be regulated within different degrees of strictness. depending on the level of risk they pose on human health, safety, or fundamental rights. The Commission, the Council, and the Parliament all agree that the risk-based approach is the right way to go. However, they still have a little disparities. So I'll just follow me what I say. So there's low risk AI application, which means that there are just basic principles to follow. Medium risk, which means that there are manageable risks, so they have to only comply with some transparency and labeling obligations. Most interestingly, the high risk AI systems or areas where they are used, there the providers and also the professional users will be required to take various measures to monitor and control these risks. These include, for example, the obligation that the system's operations and processing must be documented, and it's subject to human supervision. Also, there must be a risk management system. But there are also application contexts where we don't want to see AI at all, which is, for example, social scoring systems. So whether the requirements for risk application can actually have an effect will probably mostly depend on how they're broken down into so-called harmonized standards. Harmonized standards are not a piece of legislation, they're legal requirements. In principle, they're voluntary, but in practice, however, many companies tend to follow those harmonized standards, and they're also usually involved in this process. With regard to AI-mediated discrimination, the fundamental question is how problems of ethical AI can actually be solved with very technical specifications. You cannot really put rights and social values into technical instructions. So just to make it short, because the time is already up, we are on a tight schedule. As I said, the AI Act will be enforced 2026, and as you can see, the harmonized norms need even to be published before this. But then, is it all good? We will not have discrimination anymore? Probably not, because such laws are really complicated to implement. We also have discrimination laws already, but there is yet still discrimination in our societies. So it is definitely a right step into a good direction that we're taking with this AI Act, but what we really need is a public debate about this topic and more research from research institutions such as NGOs, which is something that we do, the Center for Trustworthy AI that I'm representing today. So just briefly what we do, we're based on 5 pillars. We want to inform and translate the complexity of AI into something that more people understand. We conduct our own research. We drive the debate about trustworthy AI. And we're also assessing AI regulation policies such as the AI Act. And we're conducting or holding a network of AI experts and people that are interested in that. So thank you for listening.
Much for our first 3 speakers. We are now going to have a little break, and then we're going to go back because we still have 2 more speakers, and we will have a panel discussions with all speakers, and you will have an opportunity to ask questions to the speakers. So thank you, and see you again here in a little while. See you. Yeah, for Dr. Jun-E Tan, please, the stage is yours. And please give a round of applause for Dr. Jun-E Tan.
Hello, can you hear me? Clear? Hi, so my name is Jun-E. I'm from Malaysia. I'm a policy research within the Digital and Tech Policy team of Khazanah Research Institute. And today I'm very honored to be here to be able to share some of my work and ideas over the past couple of years, and some are fairly recent thoughts. So I'd be interested to get feedback as well. Today we'll cover a range of things. So I'd like to spend the first few minutes looking at an area of AI risk that I think has been not covered sufficiently, which is societal risks of AI. And then after that, I'll be looking more at the governance mechanisms and what are the options out there that we can look at. And lastly, at the challenges that Southeast Asia has in terms of AI governance. So for this, I think that firstly, of course, as you guys know, and I will just need to emphasize that AI covers a range of technologies and is already very much in everyday life. And that includes like your recommendation systems that you see on your social media feed, and you have your navigation system like Waze, you have facial recognition systems in border control, and all of that, right? So that is just to foreground that this is a lot of technologies that we're speaking about, and it's very complex to have a way to regulate it. So that is what I'd like to have as the intro. So here I'm actually drawing from the work of an AI researcher, Nathalie Smuha, who basically looks at 3 types of harms that we face in society, right? So there is individual harm, there is collective harm, and then there is societal harms. So her argument is that we've been focusing too much of our AI governance efforts on individual harm and not looking enough at, say, societal harms. So I spent some time thinking about it. How do we think about what is societal harms? Because Smuha talks about like individual harm being like, for instance, your privacy being violated, or you've been wrongfully accused as a criminal, and that harms you individually, right? But then on the other side, on societal harms, you look at things like inequality, at the erosion of democracy, and you look at things like rule of law being affected, right? So I spent some time thinking about this, and I came up with this visualization, which I hope will help us in understanding a little bit more on how to think about this problem of AI risk. So as you can see in the first box, there is this orange dot up there. And let's assume that this is an individual within society connected to different people. And he or she has been harmed individually in terms of privacy, or as I mentioned, wrongfully accused of something, or received a wrong health diagnosis or something like that. So individually harmed. So then you have this collective harm, which also still looks at individuals, but clusters, like groups of individuals who might share certain characteristics, skin color, for instance, and because of the AI system that's been used, and for instance, in the US, there was a case where Black people were more highly implicated of being criminals, even though they're not. It's just the algorithm kind of like harming them, right? So then for societal harms, though, we're no longer considering the individual units. We're considering more on the connections between the individual units, right? So you might have somebody who's not harmed individually, but the connection between this person and another person is disrupted, Right, so what are the examples? So a very obvious example that all of us are concerned about is like disinformation, misinformation, deepfakes, right? That affects trust in society, affects social cohesion. So you might have like a father and son not agreeing on the same ideas on climate change, and then they, they have problems in their relationship. You might have groups of people not liking each other anymore and fighting, right? The left, the right, the conservative, the liberal, and all of that. So that's an example of how AI can affect social cohesion and trust, which is the connection. So other examples. So for instance, algorithmic management. So algorithmic management is, for instance, when you use Grab, and Grab is, or Gojek, basically they used algorithms to assign jobs. They used algorithms to tell you which is the route you should take and how much they should pay you and all of that, right? So there are for sure some individual harms that might happen, but there are also societal bits that get, we don't see them. Like for instance, how about the connection between coworkers? So because as drivers, you're individual drivers, right? You're driver partners. You're not actually like in a taxi company where you have coworkers. Then it affects your ability to organize and to collectively bargain, for instance. And it affects also the connection between you and your potential client, right? So, and it affects you and your manager. So instead of being able to talk to somebody saying that I'm really sick, I can't do the job today, or I really want a raise or whatever it is, there's nobody to talk to. So I'm talking about the relationship, right, between the client and the worker, the manager and the worker. And the other aspect of it is the erosion of established duties and obligations. So like, for instance, when we talk about classic labor relations, there's always this employer, there's the employee, and then you have the state, and then you have this tripartite relationship going on where you negotiate what the employer's obligations are to the employee, or what the employee's obligation is to the employer, right? So one part, they give you your labor, the other part, you give them social protection and money. So all of this is changed when you change the definition of employee. So now not anymore employee, is called driver partner. So all of these established obligations between these relationships within two dots are affected. So it can be a good disruption, it can be a bad disruption. My point is that there is a disruption and we need to recognize that, right? And the other thing, of course, just to highlight, I think it's also very difficult to separate what is a business decision and what is an algorithmic decision, right? So this is the other part of it that we need to consider. So this being the first part that I wanted to talk about on AI impact that is not addressed enough and should be looked at a bit more. But what types of governance mechanisms do we have? Here, I've kind of laid out a bit of an inexhaustive list. So, but it gives you an idea of what there is, right? So there are global and regional governance mechanisms that we can look at. When I say we, I'm talking about our countries, Malaysia, Indonesia. So what we can do, we can involve ourselves in standard-setting organizations. We can go to the ISO. We can talk about what are the standards we need to put in place. We can engage in free trade agreements or digital economy agreements. We can also participate in the UN's processes, the UN Global Digital Compact, or whatever they have that they're building now on a global governance body. And of course, there's ASEAN for Southeast Asia. And then the second bucket would be some existing regulatory frameworks that we are seeing coming out in the last years. So here I've got the more important countries like China and region, China, EU, and US. And these are quite important to look at because they're gonna show us some options of what is possible, right? And they actually have very different approaches. So like for instance, in China, they actually already have 3 regulations in place, and they're very vertical. They're very specific because the first regulation looks at recommendation algorithms, and the second one looks at deep synthesis, which is like deepfake, synthetic media, and the third one looks at generative AI. So as you can see, most of them are most of them have to do with content because that's what China is quite interested about of controlling content. But as I will show you later in the story of the food delivery drivers in China, it can actually have spillover effects on other applications. So then you have the EU, which is of course the EU AI Act, and also some associated other acts that work together. So we can't only talk about the EU AI Act, we also have to consider how it works together with the Digital Market Act and the Digital Services Act and the GDPR and all of that. So it's actually like a family of regulations. So we cannot just adopt the EU AI Act wholesale because I think we'll have certain gaps that we're gonna miss. The last one, the US, and usually when we think about the US, we think about it as no regulations. But that's not true, because there's actually a lot of existing laws that are in place that takes care of certain things that we care about in AI. And that includes copyright, data security and privacy, consumer protection, all of that stuff. And what tech lawyers and like civil society have been doing is actually to test the law. So like suing left, right, center. So to see, what the judges come up with as the result, and using those as precedents for AI regulation. So this, I think, would also be something interesting for our area, because, we're not very litigious like the US is, I think, but still we do have some acts and laws and things like that we can actually go to and look at and map out and see what might be interesting for us, right? So then there's also the non-binding stuff. So, and that includes what Singapore has been very active on the Model AI Governance Framework, and that is basically a set of guidelines, but it's a fairly specific one, looking at when should you have like a human in the loop, how should the internal governance structure look like, for instance, and 2 other areas that I cannot remember now. But in any case, Singapore has those as governance framework that they've laid out. And they've also come up with AI Verify, which is like a software toolkit to test if your software adheres to the 11 principles that they have. So those are non-binding, but those are still interesting to look at as governance mechanisms. So then guidelines for ethical AI, we're all interested in that at this point, Malaysia, Indonesia. And then the third one, which is also interesting, is to actually have an emphasis on the ethical review board of, say, universities or funding agencies, where I don't know if you guys know, but in certain universities, they have this review process, right? If your research is not good for human subjects or for animals or for the society, then they don't approve it. You have to go back and change your research until you get the approval. And that has been applied apparently in Stanford, where they've not only had like an ethical review process, but also the societal impact review process. That actually puts in place like societal considerations of what AI can do, and they stop it, at the beginning where it matters, at the research and development kind of stage. So there are also certification and auditing. There's also oversight mechanisms. Oversight mechanisms, I don't know very much if our governments are looking very much at that. Most of the mapping of harms and all of that I've seen are from civil society. So that's also something that we as civil society can contribute to, collecting experiences of incidents, and creating a database of what can go wrong or has gone wrong using AI. So, and etc. Of course, this is not exhaustive. So some of the lessons learned, and I have to be very quick because I have 5 minutes. There is like the horizontal or vertical approaches of AI regulations. So horizontal meaning that we're looking at defining what AI is, and then we have a regulation across this whole spectrum of what is considered as AI technology. Whereas vertical is like specific applications, right? Recommendation systems or generative AI. And so, we kind of need to figure out which direction to go, or maybe a combination. And then the EU also has an interesting idea, which I think we should consider, which is the acknowledgement that very large online platforms with millions of users should be governed differently from, say, a startup that is just starting. So that has to be something that we need to see to not stifle innovation, but to also still rein in the power of big tech companies. Transparency is possible and may drive platforms to self-regulate. I'm going to talk about an example in China. US, I've already talked about it, that we can actually look at existing laws, and a combination of different mechanisms is probably preferable. The screenshot is actually from this AI registry, or algorithmic registry from China. And what they've done is basically outlined a pool of algorithms that they're interested to monitor and have like a registry for them to register, right? So that they can track what are the algorithms of interest, who's using it, what's the data sets involved, and all of that. And I think that is something that is interesting for us to consider on first to establish a baseline of what's being used and how they might affect society, what data sets, and all of that, because we can't regulate a black box. Oops. So I wanted to touch on this case, which is very, very interesting to me, because it shows an example of how algorithms can be regulated in the case of China. So this case is about food delivery workers in China. And there are 6 million of them, and there are 2 main companies, Meituan and Ali.me. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but in any case, they are fiercely in competition. So what happens is that they try to optimize the algorithms to serve, the fastest possible time, and try to be how do you say, take care of the customers and the restaurants. And in the end, it is giving recommendations for the workers to run the red lights to speed, and there, of course, results in, traffic accidents and things like that. I'm sure we're quite familiar with that, because in Malaysia, Indonesia, it happens all the time. So what happened in 2020 was that there was a story in a magazine and it blew up, right? And they pinned it on this algorithmic logic. So when we think about algorithms, it's really a set of instructions, right? It's like a recipe. Like we do this first, we make this decision, then we do this and that. So they're saying that your algorithm is having a logic that is harming our workers. So 2 new regulations came out in China after this. So one was a rule that requires the platforms to safeguard the rights and interests of food delivery workers, and demanding that the platforms do not use the strictest algorithm, and instead to have a moderate algorithm. This is like attacking the algorithm, the logic, directly, right? And then the second one is the one that I had in the first in the previous slide, which looks at the recommendation algorithm. So 2 implications. One is that 1 out of the 29 provisions, I think, of the recommendation systems actually addresses laborers. So not only content, but also in terms of laborers, and it's quite vague, but it was enough for these 2 companies to have to actually register their algorithms within the registry. So, and of course, that they need to do the adequate compensation and rest and ensure the workers' rights and interests. So what was the result of this? The result of this is, according to Shihan and Du, and Matt Shihan looks very much at China, and his work is really interesting. I encourage you to go look him up. And what they pointed out is that within the registry, both companies actually spell out that they changed the algorithm. They no longer use the most exploitative, the most fast, like time, estimated delivery times, but they're going for the moderate algorithm. And for LME, it also provides the mechanisms for drivers to request for more time. So I think that this is a very interesting case because it shows how, for instance, of course, we have different conditions, right? China has the power to be able to compel its big tech company and all of that to go into the registry and all that. And most probably, Malaysia definitely no. We don't have that market. We don't have that power. But Indonesia, maybe. But my point here is that we need to combine our forces in order to force or to persuade the companies to participate in such an exercise. And the registry is actually not, time's up. The registry is not, far-fetched. It's just saying that I exist, you exist, and these are the things that you're using. We're not asking for, the code. We're asking just to identify what are the algorithms being used so that we have a name to it, and then our government officials don't have to, try to wonder what is there underneath the hood. Okay. So I have this, but my time is up. So it's inside this report. And this was published in 2021 with EngageMedia. I was writing the report with EngageMedia. And it looks at the challenges faced in Southeast Asia on AI governance. So the main part here that I wanted to say is that we need a regional voice, and we need to have meaningful public participation as well to create like a feedback loop within our systems, our societies, right? In order for us to know what's going on with the impacts of AI. So yes, we need to broaden our considerations of AI risks to address societal harm. We need to consider a range of available mechanisms and think about different combinations of how they might work together. And this requires us to think about, ex ante, meaning that, before the technology goes out, ex post, what happens after the technology goes out. And then you have to look at international, the national, the subnational. You have to look at different sectors. So this is very complex, right? But we at least have an idea of what to think about when we think about AI governance. So better negotiating power, combined forces, and feedback loop. So that's pretty much what I have. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everybody. So, last person, right? Before we go to the panel discussion. So, my name is Arthit. I'm now a student, right? Final year. Hopefully, should maybe like by the end of this year should graduate that, but finger crossed. So today I'm going to talk. Actually, it's going to be a little bit overlap with Jun-E. We probably like discuss to each other too much. Okay, yeah, I think. So I'm going to talk, touch a little bit more about standards, right? And But the main thing that before I lead to that, I want to talking more about accountability, right? And I think that's kind of principles that in a lot of like ethical AI principles, right? Or maybe just in general about like good governance, right? We always talk about accountability, right? For example, like in data protection as well, right? You have a lot of like principles, right? But like for example, in GDPR, right? Or I think like in data protection law in other countries as well. Oftentimes, one of the maybe like last principle is actually about accountability. So basically, it's like you do whatever, right? Principles, like maybe 6 principle, 5 principle, whatever. But the last one is like, how you're going to like making sure that the one, right, in that domain, right, in that market, actually like follow those like declared principles, right? So it's when we're talking about accountability, it's something like I think like we can put it in one sentence, right? Like one question, like we ask about who is accountable to whom, right? For what and by which standard and why? And these questions covers those actors, right, or covers a regulator or the regulation, right? But one thing I like to invite people, right, like everybody here, right, to maybe think more about that. It's the question of why, right? Why we need this accountability in the first place, right? I mean, we talk a lot about like principle. We talk about ethical standards, regulation, right? Which is like basically like the question of which like standard, right? We talk about regulator, right? Or what are the values, right? Which is like about to whom or for what, right? But why we need all this, right? Before I go to that, maybe like invite you to think about accountability, right? In maybe like 2 different usage of the word accountability, right? On the left-hand side, right, we call it accountability as a virtue, right? As a characteristic, right, of a person, right? You are a good person, right? You behave, right, something, right? On the right-hand side, we call it accountability as a mechanism, right? So if we look, for example, as look at one, maybe like a government agency, right? And sometimes we look at this government agency and you think like, okay, this is a very good organization, very good agency, because people, right, in that organization, they are good people, right? But sometimes we're talking about this as because like the process inside, right, or the structure of this organization is very good, right? And you can assure that like you can have a new recruit, right? You can put new people, new staff inside this structure in this process, and yeah, everything tends to be okay as well, like good as the public may expect as well. So on the left-hand side, we focus on, I would say like kind of like output. Let's say like if we put in the context of machine learning AI, right? We probably more focus on like how the system performs, right? The accuracy, right? Some people talk about image recognition, right? Facial recognition, right? So like how like does it like 100%, 99%, 95%, 80%? We're talking about accuracy. We're talking about the behavior of the system, right? So that's the accountability. We try to measure, right? Measure the accuracy, measure the performance, measure the whatever that we care about. But it's an accountability as a virtue. Compared to the right-hand side, right, we not really measure directly those output, right, or how the machine learning or AI system perform, but more on how this AI system, right, how that AI system has been built, right, how people design this system, how it got deployed, how it got used, what are the systems that monitor this, right? So it's more of the how this system function instead of its behavior, like its final output, right? So I think, but I'm not saying say that like one is better than another. We actually have to go for both sides, right? But oftentimes, I think people maybe think about the left-hand side of that table probably like too much. Let's skip this. So I come back to the question of why, right? Why we need the accountability. Jun-E actually like give an example of the very huge platform, right? That it's kind of like a, how to say? So for example, in the language of that EU Digital Market Act, right? They call it gatekeeper. So basically, it's kind of a platform or marketplace or somewhere that for you, right, as a user, for people, for citizens as a user of the system, in order to get into that particular kind of service, they have to go through this provider, right? So if you think about EU AI Act, right, on the most recent draft, they're talking about registration, right, of the high-risk AI system. And actually, there's only two kind of like AI system that they require, right, mandatory to register. The first one is those services from public institutions, like public authorities, right? And the second kind is those gatekeepers. So basically, those essentials for you, right? People who, those organizations who provide infrastructure, those people, those organizations who provide something that like you need in order to access some fundamental rights, for example, right? Like get access, like, yeah, something essential. So that means these, either like they are public authorities or gatekeepers, they really have a lot of power, right? So when we talk about a lot of powers, right, we think about, yeah, if you actually have a lot of power, you should also have a lot of accountability as well, right? So I think that's the question, that's the answer, like why we ask the why question, right? And when it comes to the purpose, right, like why we have this, right? So these are the reasons, right? So like this guy and his colleagues, right, Bowen's like political scientists, try to say, okay, there are at least, right, three perspectives, right, when we're talking about public accountability, right? So the first one is about democratic perspective. This is so small. Sorry about that. The second is like a constitutional perspective, and the last one is the learning perspective. I think the last one, right, it's the one that very more familiar, right, with computer scientists, with people who develop AI, right? Because this is basically the thing that machine learning is very good at, right? So when we're talking about learning perspective, basically it's something about like, because these public authorities use public resources, right, in order to provide the service, right? So it is actually their duty to improve the system, right, and learn any failures, right? Learn from the mistakes, right? So in the next iteration, whatever, right, they can provide the service better or use the public resources in a more economical way, right? And machine learning is actually very good at this, right? So I think like in terms of public accountability and learning perspective, yeah, I think like AI probably like we cover that at some level. But what about democratic perspective, right? The democratic perspective is basically talking about the legitimacy of the power, right? Or whether the powers that you use actually resonate with the views of the people, right? So they're talking about popular control, right? Whether like, for example, if the citizen, right, give this power to the government, right, to provide whatever service, right? If things gone wrong, do the citizens still have a power, right, to take back the control, right, or something like that, right? So you can actually like link this, right? If you want to try to link this to AI like principles, right? We can actually link this democratic perspective with something like that related to human oversight, right? Or something that related to transparency or explainability, right? Always have the problem pronounce that one. But why explainability and transparency matter in this sense, right? Because like, in order for the people to know that something went wrong, right? And they can get back the control, they actually have to understand first, right? What the system looks like, what are the expectations of the system. So transparency and this like explainability is actually important in this accountability and control, right? And the second one, right, when we're talking constitutional perspective, right, we're talking about the prevention of the abuse of power, right? When you're talking about power, right, abuse of power is always come into mind, right? Like in this region, we know about this, right? A lot of times, right? That like people in power like tend to abuse it. So. And this can link to something that about like the detection of bias or detection of the like model drift, right? Maybe the model that design and perform very good today, right? It's not actually necessary to perform very good next year, right? Or maybe it may be perform very good here in Indonesia, but it's not necessary to perform very good, I don't know, in Thailand, right? I'm actually like an intelligent agent as well, right? I know very well how to cross the street, right, in Bangkok, right? But it doesn't mean that I can cross the street very well here in Jakarta, right? As an intelligent agent, right? My performance that measure in one time or space, right, doesn't mean that I'm going to perform the same performance, right, the same thing like in another time and another space, right? So I think like these are like these three perspectives is maybe like we maybe it's can benefit us, right, if we can have this in mind, right, when we're talking about why we need accountability, especially from those who provide us essential services, right? My slide. Okay. Doesn't matter. Anyway, it doesn't matter those details, right? I just want you to see the layers here, right? So I'm actually like going to move on to the topic of standards because I only have like 6 minutes from now. Actually borrow this from people at the Berkman Klein Center, right? So and add some stuff on the side. But basically, like what I try to propose is like maybe we can thinking about this like AI regulation standards, ethics, right? As three layers, right? At the center, right? It's this kind of like guiding principles, right? It's basically like why we need all these, right? Ethics that like everybody talking about, right? But I think like during the opening, right, outside, someone talking about operationalize, right, type of thing, right? So I think this is the maybe like maybe one of the diagram that trying to answer that question of like how to actually operationalize these like ethical principle or human rights principles, right? So we have a principle at the middle layer, right? And there are two ways to operationalize this, right? One way it's go by regulation, like hard law, right? Like up top, right? And each society, each jurisdiction, right, may have different mechanisms, right, to realize these principles, right, into some legal code, right? But then at the bottom layer, right, we can have like technical code or computer code as well that can realize those principles as well, right? And we're talking like, I think like a lot of people already mentioned about those like international standards, regional standards, national standards, right? So that's kind of two-way, right? But they actually like complement each other, right? As I'm going to show you. too much text, right? This is actually like borrowed from EUA Act, right? Don't care too much about those texts, right? Just like look at those layers and maybe just columns, right? Basically, when we talk about accountability, right, we're talking about also talking about the stages as well, right? We're talking about so the first stage is like before the system is actually put into the market, like put into the service, right? So as Jun-E mentioned as well, right, that like those how to say like research, right, or like doing prototype, or I think like someone like outside also mentioned about sandboxing, things like that. Like, so before you actually put this thing like outside, like to the wide, right, to the market, to the general audience, right, general users, right, you actually have to declare this first, right, about the design of the system. Right, so this is something that like, okay, you should declare before you put this into the market, right, before the system is running. And then you move to this stage at the center that like during, right, during the time that the system is running, you should like keep track, right, of those like transactions, those decisions that has been made by AI, right. And then from time to time, the regulator, right, will check on those documentation, right? So on this part, right, it's more of like how the system has been designed, right? I just like this morning come up with this idea, right, to make an analogy with this, right? So AI models like use a lot of data, right? And those can be something like probably like ingredients, right? Just like this sambal. Right? If you look at, I don't know, labels, right? It shows you ingredients, right? So it's kind of thing that the law actually requires this, right? For the manufacturer to declare, right? What's actually inside here, right? Because maybe you cannot see from your eyes, like what's actually inside, right? And this has to be actually made to the public, right? So this is a kind of transparency as well. Maybe not a very good example because this is probably considered kind of like low risks, right? But and in a lot of laws, actually, like this probably a requirement for the high risk system. But yeah, maybe the analogy probably work in that sense. Like it's kind of like a declare what's actually inside, how you made this up. Right? How you build this system, right? And they also require that because there's a lot of records like going on, right? So and in order for the auditors, right, for the regulator to able to read it, some standards actually needed, right? Because like if you look at these labels, right, if like one manufacturers like decide to make the label one design, right? Another manufacturer, okay, I'm going to use, for example, like date format, right? Maybe one manufacturer use it year, month, day. Another manufacturer say that, okay, I'm going to use like month, day, and year, right? It will just like confuse the consumers, right? And also like regulators and whoever who wants to actually read this information as well. So that's also one of the things that a lot of people try to go to these like kind of standards, which is actually like very head edge, right? This is actually an example from the EU, right? And Thailand actually like take this diagram from this document, AI Standards and Assurance Roadmap from NSAI, which is a kind of like national standards authority of Ireland. Yeah. So, okay. I'm going to wrap this up. That saying that along the process of this like drafting this EUA Act, right? Just last year. The European Commission as well sent the request to the European standard bodies, right? So these like CNELEC, right, or CN, things like that, right? Which is like actually like so the first one correspond to ISO, right? And IEC in the international one, they do things on those electronic, like appliance and those stuff, right? And ITU telecommunication. So European also have like the corresponding bodies as well, right? So what they do is that like they say like in order, right, to be able to operationalize the law, they need some technical standard as well, right? For those technical documentation, for the standards of the log file and whatever, right? Like to keep track, right, of how the system works. So they asked those organizations, like in the middle column, right, to come up with the standards. But very often time, these organizations, right, Senelec and whoever, right, tend to got inspired, right, by ISO standard or IEC, right? They actually have a mirror somehow, not exactly a mirror, but like work closely together. And that comes to the last point. I found it's actually very interesting to bring up, right? Jun-E already mentioned about AI Verify initiative of Singapore, right? We found that a regulation like GDPR, right, from like data protection from the EU, right, have an effect in a lot of countries, right, without actually getting how to say, like feedback, right, or input, right, from the countries that got affected, right. And I think at least in the case of Singapore, it feels like there should be a way to work around this, right? By this program, AI Verify, they provide the testing framework and toolkit, right? And they also have that model AI governance framework, right? They actually promote this a lot, right? In a forum like World Economic Forum, right? Or when they participate in ISO, different working groups, right? They try to propose this like toolkits, right? So if you still remember like this process, right? So it means when EUA Act is going to be in effect, right? There will be these like standards from these working groups, right? Which are going to somehow closely align with the ISO standard. And the ISO standard that Singapore AI Verify try to influence some of the ISO standards, right? So I think there's some backdoor here. I don't know, right? If I can use that word or not, right? But this is also the way that smaller country, right, or a country that maybe like not really in the center of the global power, right, trying to come up with something, right, to give some input or a little bit of influence, right, to the process. Singapore start this, right, initially with the comparable to ComInfo here, right, Indonesia, together with one of the company which is like the subsidiary of Temasek, right, so basically state enterprise. But just July this year, they open source this and made it a foundation, like a spin-off. And they attract a lot of like companies, right? So this is a kind of soft law, right? But they work it that way and try to, I don't know what is going to happen after this, right? But I just stopped on this. But this is the last one. So I think they have some ambition here, right? That instead of but one thing for Singapore is like it's just a soft law and it's very self-regulation, right? But they also value cross-border. They also value like global market, right? They want to have some stance, some standing, something like that, in the global market as well, right? So that's how Singapore works, right? It's starting from a national initiative, yes, right? But in the end, you try to achieve something like that. I'm not sure like how Indonesia is like going to choose your direction, right? But I think in the end, as a lot of people said earlier, right, it's this service is going to be a lot of cross-border and yeah, so yeah, I just finished that. More of a question. So we go directly there?
Yes. You can have your seat now in the middle. And yeah, thank you for your presentation. And we are going to start the panel discussion. I would like to ask for our moderator, Hafiz Nur, to come to the stage. Hafiz Nur is the head of public policy, government relations, and research at the Center for Digital Society, Universitas Gadjah Mada. His primary research areas encompass innovation studies, science and technology, and public policy. He holds a master's degree in innovation, public policy, and public value from University College London. So please welcome Hafiz Nur, our moderator.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I hope you still have the courage and also patience for listening to us again in the next 1 hour. I hope those who are coming late can squeeze in, and also those who attend this event can squeeze in as well, sit in the middle so that those who are coming late can fill in the back of the room. Okay, without further ado, I would like to tell you about the structure of this sort of like fireside chat. So in the next 1 hour, we'll be discussing about sort of like follow-up questions to the presenters. All presenters will discuss here, and for the next 30 minutes, I will be giving the questions, and the rest of the event would be followed up by questions from the public, from you guys here offline, and those attending online on YouTube. And I would like to cordially invite all the speakers to sit with me here in front. Give an outstanding applause to our speakers, please. Thank you. It's up to you, wherever you want. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks so much. Okay. Right. Okay, thanks to you all. It's been such an intriguing and also fruitful discussion from all the speakers, and I'd like to start by asking, I personally have so many thoughts in my mind that I would like to express to you guys. Let me ask about, we talk about AI is shaped by those who are in power, say like that, the authorities who shape AI, be it in regulations and also guidelines, say for example. And I would like to ask you about how can AI algorithms be audited and also evaluated to ensure fairness and transparency? Does it even possible? Arthit, for example, you talk about accountability very much, and is it even possible for authorities to say open that AI sort of like data, algorithms to the public so that we have the accountability, transparency? This applies to everyone, so everyone can answer my question. Who wants to go first? Does that work?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think that one obvious approach is to use the technical auditing, which is a lot of discussion is actually on that. How do we do it technically? But I would like to just put forth the point that it's not only the technical side, right? Because like, for instance, what Art had on the layers, there's a social layer and there's a technical layer. And even if the technical layer is perfect, it's totally fair, it's totally transparent, totally accountable, if the business decision wasn't, then then you're gonna end up with a lot of So I think that some of those business decisions have to be given more attention to and somehow audited. So this is just a position that I'm taking. Yeah.
Okay. So there are two approaches. One is technical and one social approach to audit, to make the data open for public, something like that. Any other answer?
Yeah, I would like to add to that, because as you already said, it's really difficult to just look at the technical components of an algorithmic system and say, okay, this is an AI that will do harm or that will not, because it's something that is sometimes not so easy foreseeable. To give you a very easy example, I think you all still remember Facebook or Meta and this like button, and the makers of those have never foreseen that people would be, become addicted to get likes. It's something that is very hard. So I think to come up with this approach, you need this risk management that is also written in the AI Act and that should apply for high-risk applications. And I think that's a very important tool for the companies to actually have a look on. But what I'm not so happy about at the moment in the AI Act is that the audits are actually made by the companies themselves. So they can, of course, say that the risk is minimal, and you never know if it really applies.
Anyone? If not, I'm going to ask another question related to that.
I would like to add something, but it's not really answering that question. But yes, this is my view. I mean, so far, this AI is starting from technology side. Excuse me, I'm from technology, and then the other will help me to respond from the other side. Technologically, we always develop the algorithm, and then we always measure technically whether it is correct. It's compiled and it's processed with data with the correct accuracy based on the training. And technically, we can say this is a good model and it's good application showing that this metric of performance. However, when it's applied to the real world, sometimes the meaning will be different. Allow me to give an example. For instance, okay, next year we will have a presidential election. Based on the classification algorithm, we will help the audience in choosing the news, for instance, based on a certain group. The AI classification will try to learn the pattern and gives and detect the cluster of the group. Group A will have the preference, and therefore I give what they like, Group A. And Group B will be given the news about Group B, for instance, about the candidate. Technically, that's perfect. The performance could be even 99 or 100% correct. For us, it's best. But then socially, it will be social segregation, right? What best in technology will be the other side in social. So, measuring the impact of technology-wise, it's good, but then when we apply it to the real life, it might be another side. It's not good anymore, isn't it? Yeah, that's my view. Thank you.
So that goes to my second question, actually, regarding how do you balance between, say, AI for thriving for economic growth and also innovation versus AI to the development of AI to protect the digital human rights and also data privacy, the freedom of expression on social media with the recent developments. How do you navigate that? To what extent can you govern
I think we
those
can
domains?
have both at the same time, and we don't actually have to choose. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think I understand that like why we try to use the word balance, right? Because we try to be moderate. We try to get inputs from every stakeholders, every side, so that. But I think when you're talking about like prosperity, like let's say like economy, right, and human rights, right? I think we don't actually have to choose, right? We can actually get both. Right? Maybe it's more difficult, right? But I think we get things smarter by AI. So, yeah, sure.
Can I just add on that? I hope my mic is on. Yes, no?
Not yet. Yeah. Not yet. Maybe turn on. Press.
I didn't switch it on.
You have to turn on.
It's on.
I mean, me and technology today, right? Thank you. Well, I would like to bounce off of that. I'm not blaming you as the moderator for asking the question, but I think to oppose innovation and human rights, innovation and privacy and so on, is already the wrong approach. It's like, I don't know, do we want to breathe or do we want to sleep? I don't know. You know, it's just, I think it comes from a fundamental misunderstanding that innovation is only technical innovation, although we know there are things such as social innovation, organizational innovation, and so on. So that's the first misunderstanding. And the second one is that then the technical innovation is more or less the idea of Silicon Valley, move fast and break things, right? But if you break things and it's democracy or human dignity, maybe don't break it, right? And there are other ways to achieve technical innovation. And to have regulation, have the security, for example, know exactly what the safeguards are. Then you develop with that new constraint. It's just a new constraint that you work with. And then you innovate, and you find new ways, you find new tools, you find new ways of solving the problem with that, and maybe even new organizations, social innovation, and so on. So I do think if we don't oppose regulation and innovation, we can actually move faster as a society, and we should abandon this discourse, which comes from big organizations mainly who have an interest in stifling regulation for their own good.
When it used to be the case, right, before data protection regime, right, that personal data is free, right? So as a software engineer, right, we only factor about the CPU cycle, right? The amount of RAM this algorithm is going to use, the storage, the speed, and whatever, right? But we never factor the violation of privacy into the algorithm, right? But once this data protection regime is like very widespread, right? There are technology like those like differential privacy, or there are things like privacy preserving data mining, right? So this technology, right, provide the same, right, functionality, but also, right, at the same time, protect us in terms of privacy as well. So I think like we can have both, right?
And to get more technical, you can know more about this, but that would enhance more research and more deployment of on-device encryption, on-device machine learning, and so on, because it is possible to go that direction, but right now, we're not, because the businesses are not interested in doing that, right?
That's right. You mean, is it even possible we have that ethical business approach to this? Or that's another topic to discuss.
It is another, if I may, sorry. It is another topic, but also it's not a new topic. So I feel like a lot of what's been coming up with the ethical AI discussions, although digitalization has been changing some things, right, and others not, I've been told by colleagues who've been working on corporate social responsibility, that's 20 years ago. We're rehaving the discussion now in ethical AI. that CSR has been having 20 years ago, greenwashing and so on. Can companies be ethical? Yes, no. Do they have a social responsibility or not?
Now you're going to say
Oh,
something.
yes. I wanted to say something on economic growth and AI, because I'm going to just question that if it's even possible to get economic growth with AI, in that I feel that we in the region are lacking in a lot of key ingredients of AI. We lack talent, we lack data, quality data, we lack compute power, a lot of things we lack. So there's a structural inequality. What is this? There's a snake in the room. Okay. So I think that we need to. It's probably me.
Jake. Somebody hijack us, I think, and no.
Okay. So, well, I'm just going to try to speak like clearly. So I wanted to say that we are really back, like really behind in the race, right? So the assumption of a lot of AI strategies, because that's where I'm coming from, is that if you throw enough of resources at the problem, you'll get there. You'll get in front of the race. But you're not gonna be able to do that. I think that we were not gonna be able to compete with the US, with China, with the EU, and with the middle power countries who have more wealth, more talent, right? So I would like to question that if AI actually would bring economic growth per se, as according to our national AI strategies. So the other point that I wanted to mention also, that the problem about choosing this or that as well, sometimes you just don't get to choose, right? Because it's a problem of distribution. So the people who have the power would be making the algorithm to their own favor. So do you get to choose in that sense what type of ethical technology that you're going to be having access to, what type of money you're going to be able to get, using the AI technologies? A lot of times it's not a choice, I feel. It's not even, this or that, it's just this. So I'm more pessimistic in that sense.
Okay, I would also like to ask if I can be heard.
If not, you can choose.
Yeah, right. Maybe now?
Okay.
Okay. I also think that this innovation versus digital rights is a little difficult. And what I like about the European way of approaching the regulation is to put AI into certain products, which makes it somehow manageable, as opposed to like huge AI systems that are really not so easy to regulate. But when you put it into a product, it's something that we have always been doing, at least in Europe, to use product security measurements. So again, getting back to the example of the car, cars weren't much regulated before, but then you got streets, you got more rules, what to do and how to drive, and everyone eventually got very used to the fact that you have to apply to certain rules because a car is a dangerous thing. And also, harmonized standards is something that was adopted by the industry because it was just easier to work with other companies if you have certain norms on how big is the door and where is the screw and whatever. So, and this didn't stop innovations from happening in the automotive sector at all, actually enhanced it. So I wonder why we have always in innovation AI, why do we have this in AI so much? And one more thing about the AI Act in this regard is we often talk about how it's going to regulate AI on this risk-based approach, but what we don't talk about, because it's not so controversial, is that there are many chapters that also give some basis that the members of the European Union have to actually give a lot of money for the research. So that's another thing that's embedded already in the idea of this whole AI Act. And the risk-based approach also wants to put focus on that you don't have to regulate all of those AI systems, but only those in certain areas where there is a higher risk. And I think that's a clever approach, actually.
We do have... We do have a big innovation inhibitor, and that is actually in the data economy, in information economy, it is a concentration of corporate power. Because you do have this convergence towards the biggest players, and today many young companies, they don't want to be the next Google or the next Amazon, because they will never be anyway. They want to be bought by Amazon, by Google, so they already tailor their products or services to what might be useful for big tech. And this is actually a big inhibitor of especially technical and also social innovation.
Okay, great. Does anyone here have questions? Can I just, okay, I think it's up to me then. Okay, the lady on the first row.
Please,
I think it's you, right?
please.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Shirley. I'm an independent researcher. So I made a research together with Article 19. The title is Content Moderation and Local Stakeholders in Indonesia. So we found that actually back in the election 2019, that seeds of hate were distributed massively in social media and turned into riots in front of our Bawaslu. Bawaslu is election authority in Indonesia. So my question is very practical, that I would like to know so we are civil society organizations, we are working together so that we can monitor what social media companies are doing, because we will be having our election in February 14, 2024. So from the panelists, you mentioned all about the different AI principles. What is the most fundamental principle that civil society should be focusing on, and what can we do in very short manner? Thank you.
Wow, that's tough then. I think I'm...
If I'm going to say, of course, I'm going to say accountability, right? And I think like platform accountability is actually really important. I mean, even there's no regulation specifically on platform or AI at all, right? You can still use a kind of like a contract, right? Contractual, whatever kind of thing as well, right? So basically, at the very least, right? The platform should do what they say they're going to do. Right, so just keep how to make them keep their own promise, right? Or at the very beginning, does there any way, I don't know, like to make them commit on something, right? Which in a lot of time, actually, if you look at the job description, right, in LinkedIn, right, or those like job posting site, right, for public policy managers, right, or public policy position for those company, right, is like whether it's like Meta, AWS, Google, whatever, it looks more and more like they're going to file political desk for an embassy in whatever country, right? The job description looks more and more similar, right? So that's the way I'm trying to say that, like a lot of times what they say in the public, right? They use the language that in the end it's so diplomatic and doesn't actually commit anything. So that's maybe the first difficult part. Right, but if you actually like in the end made or if they voluntarily say something or promise something, right? I think like maybe like at the very least, right, try to make them keep their own promise.
Okay.
I think I would just like to add, because in the sense of, I think you were also talking about miscommunication, fake news, and all these kind of things that are likely to happen in campaigns for in the political realm. And I think it's difficult if we just leave the individual, the citizens, with the need to decide whether this is fake news or not. I think there must be very strong civil society organizations as well as research institutes that hold them accountable, may it be companies, may it be politicians, because it's too much to ask from an individual itself to like go on all these websites and really check what have they said, what have they done eventually. And if I was the minister here, I would definitely assign more money to those organizations so they conduct their research.
I'm sorry. I mean, touching on misinformation, I found that I'm sorry. Thank you. I found that most of the time I got those information from my own family group. Right? I think everybody has the like family chat group.
Everyone has an aunt or an uncle who sends those
something like
things,
that, right? I think they send those information to us because they care. Right? I mean, like a lot of times it's about like medical thing, right? It's about like, oh, eat this, it's good. Don't eat this, don't eat that, right? Or don't go out of your house during the night today because they're going to a bad luck or something like that, right? It extends to like those political realm as well. So I think maybe yes, like fact checking is one thing, right? But how to also actually, I don't know, like culturally, right? Bit by bit, make people thinking about this, that like, okay, sending misinformation can also harm the people you love, right? Because I think like the incentive initially that they send this kind of information to anyone, right? But because they love, they care about that person. Maybe not every cases, right? But at least this at least happens in those like aunties, like uncle group, right? All our beloved uncles, right? So if we can make them feel like, okay, sending information can harm someone that they love, maybe they can step back a bit, that, okay, maybe I have to think about this more. Sorry.
I think that's more a long-term thing that you're
yeah, of course,
on, right?
Of course.
Because teaching people what is misinformation, what is not, will take a long time. I'm not sure if you're coming in the right time for the election in Indonesia next year.
The election is next year.
We have a lot of elections to come. Sorry.
Okay, is it Jun-E?
I wanted to quickly respond, but mine is also not, I realize you're on the time crunch, and this is not addressing that. But I think that there's actually quite a number of civil society organizations that are interested in this, because 2024 is going to be a lot of elections. So one way to go about is also to work with those organizations, form alliances and partnerships to see what they're doing, and maybe they might have access into the platforms that we might not have. So one would be to do that, which would be a more immediate election-related kind of response. The longer thing, comment in the longer term that I have is something that I learned last week from this platform accountability conference that we had in Kuala Lumpur, which is to actually examine the incentive structure of the spreading of the disinformation, right? So some presenters during that event were saying that actually a lot of the spreaders of this misinformation, disinformation, are actually content agnostic. They don't have any values. They don't care. They operate from Cambodia, affecting Thai policy or whatever it is, just because they see a business opportunity. Right? So there's a monetization element to that we need to make platforms accountable in the type of money that they're actually getting from all of these people. So when we talk about incentives, there are some disruptors who have bad intentions. They want to make the election go a certain way.
So that's one type of incentive, right? They want to affect the outcomes of the elections. But the other type of incentives would be the financial incentives that have no bearing whatsoever. They don't care about your democracy. So that's something I think is quite important to consider when we talk about platform accountability. And lastly, on the point of education, I actually really do think that we need to have it like a mindset of vaccination, really. That we need to inoculate people to disinformation. Because sometimes if you make them understand that this is potentially deepfake, this is so easy to do, you know, and you do it at a large scale, recognizing the problem that it brings to democracy and all of that. We did it for COVID, and I think that we can eventually see the importance of doing it for society in terms of having like a clear understanding of what can be true and what cannot be true, that sort of stuff. Yep.
Anyone would love to add?
Yeah, I back that 100%, everything you just said.
Okay, let me add another perspective. Next year will be Indonesia election. Okay, the question is in relation with AI. But just imagine, how if next year election, but take out the AI? Is there any election? Is there any problem? Still, right? So, in fact, we just make this more complex by adding AI problems. In fact, without AI or with AI, there is no problem. We just to glorify, to be scared of AI. Because basically AI is only work when we ask it to do it. AI does not have any initiative, does not have any intentionally automatically create something. So only being used. So AI, I want to put this, AI just tool. So let's put it that way. It's just our assistant. So as long as we can use it to our benefit, then just use it. And then for the fact checking and so on, it's us. It's human who can check the ground truth, not AI. So don't give this AI for checking the ground truth, so making the problem more complex, and then who will audit this, whether the fact checking of AI correct or not, then that's creating another problem, right?
Nice answer. Okay, any more questions?
Ada. Mas.
Okay, my name is Bimo. I'm also independent researcher. I research about, I'm sorry, disinformation and misinformation again. So basically, let me explain my last research about the pattern of disinformation and misinformation. Sir, I'm sorry, I totally agree that the AI is just a tool and human is the actors behind the AI. But my previous research says that the pattern of disinformation and misinformation is created by the three variables. First variable is the input variables, the second is process variables, and the third one is the output variables. The input variables is talking the disinformation, and the misinformation is caused by the motives of disinformation. So when I share the hoax to my family because I care, this is the first variable. And the second variable that I found in the last 50 years in the literatures is the algorithmic bias. So the algorithmic bias is not, the AI have the intention to share the misinformation, but AI is operate unintentionally to share the hoax. So this is not the problem of the AI. This is not the problem of the actors, but the algorithm creates the hoax, share the hoax unintentionally. So based on that problems, I have to mention the presentation about the policy. The example from the China delivery foods is the example that state have role to intervene the algorithm when the state see the internet is the state property. But in Indonesia, in the Malaysia, and in the other regions, internet is seen as the public property. So the state has no strong roles, has no strong influence to intervene the algorithm if AI creates the hoax and distribute the hoax unintentionally. So my question is, how your suggestion, if there is that case of condition in the state that the internet is a public property, the state has no access to intervene the algorithm. Thank you.
So regarding the state intervention on AI, please, anyone?
I would like to continue my proposition. So, okay, I'm the technologist, so allow me to discuss it that way. So, if AI, okay, in fact not only AI, but any technology for the communication, maybe communication being used for, and the technology being used by communication or psychology, mass psychology to influence the society, that's the reality. But then, my point is, let's strengthen our humanity. In fact, in this digital world, digital advances, we tend to become less human. We rely on technology. So it's my call. So let's go. Let's be human again, 100%. So any technology, any information, let's educate the society, our children, to become critical. Because if I remember my childhood, when I studied, if I have any question, what I ask is, who I ask is my parents or my teacher. But now, after 2000, everyone asking Google. Do you believe that Google always gives the best and correct answer? No. Therefore,
Certainly not.
okay, therefore, let's be conscious mind. Be conscious that digital world is, in fact, have a lot of problem. When we put machine in that kind of environment, of course, it's in fact our fault when we rely on that technology. So my view is, let's put this. I am a utilitarian, so use technology as for our benefit when it's useful. But then on the other hand, don't rely everything on that one. So when I want to check something, then okay, I check the Google what I said, but then I still think, is it correct? Is it my final decision is on me, whether this information correct or not, and what will I decide later is still on my control. Okay, please.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. Well, I do think Google has really made possible access to a lot of information, a lot more diverse information to many people, and there are some people, some communities, some groups where access to non-authoritarian information, which means not from teachers or from the government, is actually a good thing, to have alternative sources. Now, that's exactly the same approach that has been weaponized by conspiracy theories or by weaponizing fake news, is tell people, but do your own research. Right? Don't trust what you see. That can be a good thing. It can also be weaponized. So I do think it needs to be a multi-pronged approach. There's not one easy remedy, of course. And I do think going to the business model is very important. I'm glad we brought that up. And learning from people who already know that. So colleagues of mine have been, you've been studying, right? How to deal with conspiracy theories. There is work on what to do to spread, limit the spread of this information. You're doing work. So if we talk to each other and we don't have this discussion that now we who talk about AI ethics and standards comment on the misinformation and the communication, which brings in a whole new lot of problems about the freedom of information, about the telecommunication infrastructures and so on. It's all interlinked, of course, but we are not all experts in everything, right? In the same way, I do think that also different countries, different communities can learn a lot from what's already happened elsewhere. And this exchange, for me, has been so enriching, and I've been learning so much, and I do think that's also part of the solution. Just a small drop, but one drop.
I have something to say with regards to whether it's sorry, with regards to who owns the infrastructure, right? I do think that it is not a public infrastructure, therefore we don't vote for how it's being built. We don't vote for what are the incentive structures and all of that behind. So it does make a difference whether the state takes responsibility or not on what are the decisions behind it. And therefore, responding also to your point on technology being neutral, I do not agree. Because all of those design decisions were made by somebody. And in the case of disinformation, the one that I was talking about on platform accountability and monetization and all of that, these actors have just figured out how the game works, right? They're able to twist the tool to serve their own purposes, and the unintended consequence does not concern them. But they're playing by the game that somebody designed and somebody provided to us, and that game, I think, needs to hold some responsibility as to breaking democracy and all that. Yeah.
And that's exactly what is tried in Europe with the Digital Market and Service Act, because we have seen that the Facebook algorithm and also on other platforms are actually, enforcing that you stay more on the platform, and by doing that they give you all the horrible stories of the world, often also fake news, something that is very dramatic and negative. And we've seen that Facebook and other social media have been responsible in really destabilizing democracy, which is the third dimension of what you have shown, I think. So a huge scale outcome. And so far, nobody was really there to stop them. So with the Digital Services Act, now they are held accountable for this. But unfortunately, the European Union is a little slow in addressing this issue. The Commission will only be able to make them responsible or file a lawsuit against them after the European elections, also next year.
Okay. So following up to the EU regulation, there is this one question from our online audience stating that, so this commenter, AI government mechanisms, it seems that it only reminds me of the Brussels effect. So as an information, Brussels effect is the process of unilateral regulatory globalization caused by the EU, externalizing its laws outside its borders through market mechanisms. Have you heard?
Well, just roughly, yes, well, the EU is of course hoping that this can be the new GDPR, and that the GDPR had a huge effect in other parts of the world. It's, I think, a well-known fact also in the US. Mm-hmm. But it was not just the law itself, it was also everything that followed afterwards, because there have been several lawsuits that actually had to, make it more concrete what it actually meant. And I think we'll be seeing that now with the AI Act as well, if that answered the question more or less.
I think we can call it Brussels effect, right? We can call it California effect, right? If it's in the US context, right? Or we can call it race to the top, right? If we're talking about, let's say, in a market, right, that consumer has a freedom to choose the product or services that fit them the most, right, and affordable inside that, right, and then the provider in the market try to compete to each other to provide a better service, right? So I think yeah, you just pick the name, right? But I think effectively, if it's good for the consumer, good for the citizen, good for the workers, I think I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Okay. And I also think that it's interesting because all of these are essentially experiments in a way, how we're governing a technology that we don't understand. So it's an interesting time to be alive in that sense, and we should actually look at different cases as why I was bringing up the Chinese case, because it's done differently. It might need a certain context, but it can be done a certain other way. So it's kind of up to us to observe all these experiments and see what sticks and what might work in our own context, and then try to lobby for that.
Yeah, and also, how to say, say I'm from Thailand, right? And a lot of people say, oh, Facebook it's bad in that sense, Google bad in that sense, whatever, right? But at least, right, they actually provide more freedom of expression than our public television, right? So I'm not saying that Facebook is actually very good, in every sense, right? But I mean, in some particular area, right? I think it's just up to the people, right, to choose, right, what tools, right, that they like to use the most effective way for that particular purposes.
As we are approaching our final chapter of the event, I think I would like to ask you about your closing remarks regarding the humanity in the age of AI, particularly AI governance globally. What do you say?
Okay, let me start with my view. Lately, the AI hype, I think, brings all of us our attention to think that AI is something which is maybe, important, but also scary and others. And we tend to humanize AI. We tend to think that AI is something intelligent being with all the capability of growing itself and improving, and it will take over human activities, human lives, and so on, right? So let's put thing that let's face this technology. Technology will be we technology, we are engineers. We try to create tools to help human life, to make life easier, better. We can improve it, we can enjoy it, but then also don't assume that everything is deterministic. So the question, many people question about the impact, or why you create this technology without thinking the effect and so on, assuming that we create this with all the determinism. Of course, when we create this technology, we don't know what will it being used. It can be used for goodness or for bad. It can be used for private, it can be used by group, it can be used by many things. So it's also not from the very beginning. We can preconceive the idea about what will this technology impact our society. So, and there are many consequences which it's only maybe just our dream, our something we dream it will happen, but it might not happen. So let's enjoy this technology, and in one hand, we need the help of other domain, the expert from sociology, psychology, and others. And I think that's we still have to keep that. We have the power over this technology. We have to keep critical mind facing the technology, the results, like what we see from the ChatGPT performance. Right nowadays, we can show that even AI ChatGPT can make mistakes. It will be like human. So we will also think whether human will use the same standard to AI and human. When we say human can make mistakes, can we accept machine AI also make a mistake? Because so far we always blaming on something. We create machine because of human has problem with that one. Or when we have machine and see the machine doesn't work well, it's we don't believe that machine. So let's be fair and more realistic about this technology. Thank you.
Closing remarks.
I have 5 points. I hope I get them all right. So it is very difficult to translate ethical principles into technical standards and technical principles, and we haven't solved it today, which was probably not what we intended to do, but still. One thing that I already said before in the presentation is that AI is always made by humans, and thus humans are always accountable for what they build. So I totally agree on that technology is not neutral. I forgot number 4, but number 5 was that I was very interested to hear from Indonesia and all the other Asian countries that there is such a huge debate about this already, about ethical principles in AI, and it really reminds me so much of the European Union and Germany, and it makes me actually very positive for the future that this topic is already so fiercely addressed here.
Well, I'll jump in then. I think I just want to sort of point back to the societal harms part of how AI can, disrupt connections, change connections, and all of that. And to me, it really feels like something that's hidden in plain sight, that it's there, but nobody is talking about it, nobody's pointing at it. In the next year, my institute, we're going to actually be looking at algorithmic management and its impacts on platform workers. And one of the things that we're hoping to find out is how are people responding to this, right? Because you might say, okay, one way to look at this is to change the algorithm, to change the disruption. But if that's out of your reach, what can you do instead? How can you organize to still preserve those connections, still build those connections in order to benefit society? And in a way, then technology disrupts, but you still have some social scaffolding, so to speak, of adapting to and mitigating the using climate change lingo here, but the risks of societal harms of AI. Right? So how do we mitigate and adapt to these societal disruptions, basically? So something for us to consider beyond technology. Maybe there are some social ways that we can go about this.
Okay, I got one thing in the end. I think AI, it's like micro government, right? Micro in this sense is micro in micromanagement, right? So our government, like national government, let's say, like decide about our life probably like once a year or maybe like once a month, right? But AI decide about our life maybe like every minute or every seconds, right? So I think like in Indonesia, in Thailand, in a lot of countries in Southeast Asia, the problem about our government is impunity, right? So don't give impunity again to AI.
Last one. Do you have one?
I like don't give impunity to AI. So we can end on that and maybe also chat maybe later because it's late and you've all been very brave to stay so long.
Okay, I think that wraps up our discussion for this evening event. Thank you very much for joining us offline and also online. And stay tuned for upcoming events by Goethe-Institut. Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.